Well, we want to welcome everybody to our post-secondary education webinar 2. As we begin, we want to encourage all of you to put your name in the chat and tell us maybe perhaps where you're coming from tonight. Feel free to share whether you're a student, a family member, or educator, or here in some other capacity. And we have the chat function there that's located at the bottom of your screen. So thank you again for joining us in this webinar, and this is called Planning for Success. Thank you. Next week, if you're interested, and we hope you are, we are going to have our last webinar of the series, and that is called the College Experience Real Talk, and that will be held next Wednesday, September 17th. So this is the second webinar in the series of 3. So if you have not registered for webinar 3, we hope you will, and we're putting in the chat the link for that registration. So at the onset here, we want to acknowledge and express our gratitude to Rita Jo Scarcella and her staff of interpreters for they're with Sign of the Times, and they provide our sign language for our webinars. And tonight's interpreters are Heather Ivy and Jay Wexler. We also have closed captioning, and that's available by accessing the toolbar, which is located at the bottom of your screen where the words show captions are displayed. So you can check that out as well. So for the next hour and a half, we will be sharing stories, perspectives, information, and resources, all with the intended goal to empower possibilities for inclusive post-secondary education. We all here value and know that inclusion works, and how to make it a valued and meaningful option in the post-secondary education sphere is really the focus of the conversation that we had last week, continues this week, and next week as well. But we also want all of you to be a participant in that conversation. So we have a Q&A function that's found on the toolbar under the word more. And we have scheduled time at the conclusion of all the presentations so that you can have your questions addressed. We will try to address as many as we can. And those that we don't get to, we're certainly hoping to, that will at least inform us for our last webinar. So a few more housekeeping things. For those of you who may not know us, we are PennTASH. We are a chapter of National TASH, and that organization has been around for 50 years, celebrating the 50th anniversary this year. TASH is known for advancing equity, opportunity, and inclusion for people with disabilities. If you'd like to know more or are interested in becoming a member, you can follow the links in the chat. Our PennTASH chapter is involved very actively in inclusion advocacy, not only at the local level, but at the state level, and our members are also involved nationally as well. All 3 of our webinars are being recorded and posted on the TASH YouTube channel, and that link is also being provided for you. In addition, you will have access to a variety of resources connected to each of our webinars, and that will accompany the YouTube video posting. So all of you who are here today will receive an email notifying you when this recording is available, and then you can go check that out and the resources as well. So in planning for these various webinars, we became really excited because this, of course, speaks to our core, which is about inclusion. But more importantly, what this webinar series has allowed us to do is given us a platform to specifically talk about post-secondary education, and specifically for individuals with intellectual disability and developmental disability. So to sort of summarize, last week we began our series by sharing the perspective of 2 students. They shared with us their take on college, their vision, their goals, their successes and challenges. They emphasized the importance of their voice being heard throughout the IEP process. And then again, how their voice should be heard and can be heard in the form of accommodations in the college setting. So webinar 1 also included an overview of the differences between the IDEA, which applies to students through high school, and then Section 504 and the ADA, which is applicable to students in the post-secondary education world or college. And then last, we identified and debunked a number of myths about post-secondary education for students with intellectual disability. And we heard about the various frameworks and models, both around the country and in Pennsylvania. So if you did not attend webinar 1, we encourage you to check out the recording. Okay, so one of the things that we also would be remiss if we did not mention, and that is how the webinars were funded. So funding for this webinar and all 3 of them was made possible by the TIPSID grant, which stands for Transition and Post-Secondary Programs for Students with Intellectual Disabilities, and that's through Millersville University as part of the Pennsylvania Inclusive Higher Education Consortium. And those who were involved in putting together all the wonderful presenters and the content for these webinars. I'd like to say thank you to all the members of the Education Committee of PennTASH, and also a big shout out to Donald Taylor with National TASH for their support in assisting in registration, marketing, and some of the Zoom logistics as we run the webinars each week. Okay, so our plan for today's webinar, we want to talk a little bit about breaking barriers, the social and human rights model. We're going to have you hear a little bit some more from some student and family perspectives. We're going to have some conversations about what are the conversations that educators, families, and students need to have throughout the IEP process for transition planning. And then we're also going to talk about vision building. What are some of those tools for success? And then, as I said, we're going to provide, hopefully, plenty of time for you to ask some questions and comments and exchange some dialogue near the end. Your takeaways then will be, hopefully, learn how the social and human rights model really does support inclusive post-secondary education. You know, there's still a mindset in some spaces with regards to a deficit model. You know, we really want to debunk that and help others understand how important the social and human rights model is to support inclusion. We hope that you will be taking away new insights from the student and family perspective. There are so many wonderful stories around the state of Pennsylvania of students who've experienced college, and we're just giving you a snapshot during these webinars, but they're pretty powerful. And then you hopefully will hear practical suggestions that you can then take with you as part of your own IEP and transition planning process with whatever role you might have in that. And then we want you to gain useful knowledge and resources and take those away with you as well. Okay, so you will see here a list of the presenters and moderators I will mention separately, but we have a full group of wonderful presenters today. There's in alphabetical order, so I'm going to share with you a little bit about each one, and as I call their name, hopefully you'll be able to see them. First of all, we have Lisa Aquila. So Lisa, hope to see, there you are, thank you. So Lisa is a resident of Northeast Philadelphia. She has advocated for the independent living movement since the early 1990s. She worked as a personal care attendant for home and community-based services from 2006 to 2013. Lisa has been an active volunteer for disability equality in education since 2017, and she lobbied for the passage of the Disability Inclusive Curriculum with her state representative, Joseph Hohenstein. She co-founded the Coalition on Disability Inclusive Curriculum in 2021 to build awareness and support for Pennsylvania's disability inclusive curriculum legislation, and that was made into law in July 2022. Since then, the coalition has grown to include members from many other states. And Lisa is the proud board vice chair for Disability Equality in Education and serves as their outreach liaison. She has co-written some of the actual lessons that are used in schools, and those can be located on the Disability Education, Equality in Education, website. And she's an active member of our PennTASH Education Committee. So we welcome you.
Thank you, Robin.
Next up in alphabetical order is Linda Cartwright. So Linda, we can see you. She is a family support specialist with the Pennsylvania Training and Technical Assistance Network. I refer that as PATAN, but I know others say Patane, Patton, things like that. Linda brings a combined perspective of parent and professional insights. And I'm not sure, can we see her? I'm not seeing her on my screen, but hopefully you can see her with her video.
We can.
Oh, great. Thank you. So also she has, navigated the special education system both as a professional and as a parent. And in doing so was advocating for her son, who's now an adult son with Down syndrome. She, as well as she has worked for the Bureau of Special Education to provide resources to families and professionals. So her current area of focus is at Patan, is respects to schools engaging families and OSEP grants, which are some of the federal grants. And she also includes the Families to the Max Pennsylvania statewide family network. So she's very invested in a lot of things that are happening at the state level. And then we have Stephen Cartwright. Stephen, we welcome you. So Stephen Cartwright is an adult who has, quote, something extra, including an extra chromosome. He embraces life, and those who meet him have embraced his bubbly personality and no fear attitude. Stephen has a passion for sports and has been the manager of several local teams, a Children's Hospital of Philadelphia champion, featured on posters and TV, and a speaker at conferences and other educational events. So one of Stephen's greatest accomplishments, and you're going to hear about it today, is completing the SILS program at East Stroudsburg University in 2023. During college, Stephen was an ESU cheerleader, Sigma Phi Epsilon Delta Special Education and Rehabilitation Ambassador, assistant to the director of clubs and organizations, involved in Best Buddies, and had several work internships. Currently, Stephen is working at a local restaurant and volunteers at the Pennsylvania Training and Technical Assistance Network, which, as we mentioned, where his mom is affiliated, a program of the Pennsylvania Bureau of Special Education. So welcome, Stephen. We also have LaQuenta Montanez. So welcome, LaQuenta. LaQuenta is a seasoned special education advocate, transition specialist, and educational leader with over 27 years of experience supporting students with disabilities and their families. She holds a Master of Science in Educational Administration from Edinburgh University and a Bachelor of Science in Special Education from Cheyney University of Pennsylvania. Her work centers on advancing equity, inclusive practices, and post-secondary outcomes for students with disabilities through strategic partnerships, interagency collaboration, and community engagement.
Thank you, Robin.
You bet. Next, Diane Perry. She has over 20 years of education, advocacy, and family leadership under her belt. She is the Family Resource Specialist for the Peel Center in Philadelphia and the surrounding counties. In addition to her work at Peel, Diane serves on the state Special Education Advisory Panel known as SEEP. Diane's son David is 31 and he received special education services when he was in school. He graduated from a higher education inclusive program in college, works part-time, and serves on 2 boards. The Self-Advocates Unites as One, and the acronym is SAU1, and the Sean King Fund for Inclusive Education. And last but not least, we have Kate Small. So Kate is an instructional leader grounded in the how of inclusive education. She's a change agent dedicated to accessibility for all learners. She's a full-time consultant with Empower Ed School Solutions, partnering with school districts and state departments of education to lead inclusive change. With experience as a general educator, a special educator, inclusion facilitator, and instructional coach, Kate values collaboration's role in student success. She believes deeply in the power of partnerships between families and school teams, recognizing that strong, trust-based relationships are essential for helping all students thrive academically, socially, emotionally, and for equipping them with the skills, confidence, and opportunities to live out their goals beyond high school. Wow. I'm just, every time when I read these to sort of practice what I was saying, I'm like, we have such a mountain of expertise here. So I also want to give a shout out and to let you know that we have moderators Kathy Brill, Colleen Tomko, and Betsy Winter Hall. They are involved in various capacities in our webinar today, our Q&A, sharing of the PowerPoint slides and so forth, and they are active members of our education committee. They are also all proud parents of either former college or prospective college students. So thank you to all of you as well. Okay, here we go. So we're going to first start off with Lisa Aquila, and she is going to talk a little bit about tools for success, the social and human rights model. So Lisa, I'll let you take the stage.
Thank you, Robin. Hi, everyone. As you know, transition planning guides students into adulthood, and it helps them with employment, college, and independent living skills. And in doing this planning, I wanted to tell you about the social model and the human rights model today, because understanding these two things can really be a great tool to apply when you're planning. So the social model and the human rights model are the opposite of the medical model, which is often what the path takes in IEP and transition meetings. It often results in congregation and segregation if they use the medical model. But the social model says, let's change the environments, the systems, and the attitudes that stand in our way. And the environments are the spaces and stuff around us that can make life easier or harder for people with different abilities. The social model is part of the 3 barriers that we're going to talk about today. The environments is one. For example, the lack of ramps and so forth. The social model says that the individual is not the problem that creates the barrier. Rather, it's society that creates the barrier and holds back students from being the best they can be. So today I want to share with you all the ways that the social model and the human rights model are key in future planning. So often, professionals focus on students' medical diagnosis, and they forget about highlighting their needs or their dreams. They focus more on how can we fix them, which is not the path we want to take, right? So by using the social model and the human rights model, we change their goals into realities. We challenge the barriers and the assumptions and remove what stands in the student's way. And as I said, the 3 barriers of the social model are, number 1, the environment, and number 2, on the next slide, the systems. Okay, things like the insurance coverage and in-classroom supports would be the systems. Rules and routines can include people or leave them out, sometimes without meaning to. Okay, and the 3rd barrier on the next slide is the attitudinal barrier. Wrong attitudes so often create barriers too. Attitudes like, let's fix the disability, or attitudes that say students can't thrive in general education classrooms. Students with an IEP can't go to college. Well, we know those are wrong attitudes. What people think and believe about others can open doors or slam them shut. And we're here today to open those doors. And on the next screen, you will see the many ways that society influences the social outcomes and the barriers that are detrimental to students' path to success. And things like sheltered workshops, inaccessible facilities, and all the stigma that surrounds so often students with intellectual or physical disabilities. So using the social model and the human rights model during the IEP meetings and the transition planning will help you and the team design and dismantle the barriers. Okay, I want to give you a few examples. So instead of assuming a student with an intellectual disability could work in a coffee shop or a sheltered workshop, why don't we first look at what students' strengths and interests are? For example, a student named Mary Beth is an artist and she loves to read. So why wouldn't you suggest that Mary Beth would do best working in a library or an art studio rather than a coffee shop? It just makes sense. So write goals that reflect access, not deficits. Traditional planning often will look like this. In the case of Maria, it may say, Maria will improve reading level by 1 grade. But the human rights model says Maria will access grade level text using text-to-speech software. And how can we help Maria achieve success by doing so? So be very specific in your planning and writing out your goals. Don't generalize, be specific. Another example would be a student named Tanisha who has an intellectual disability, has difficulty with written expression, and her strengths are in verbal communication. And she's also very tech savvy. So then why not consider her stronger skill set when setting her goals? Instead of providing a written essay to obtain a scholarship or complete an assignment, suggest rather than that Tanisha could create maybe a PowerPoint on Canva or record a podcast on the key elements of the essay. Always, always remember to advocate for UDL. Universal design is not just about good pedagogy, it's about justice. And it shifts the burden from the student to the system. The barrier is not Tanisha's learning disability at all. The barrier is the lack of options to complete the task at hand, which is the essay. So position accommodations as rights, not fixes. Instead of treating support as some special favor, frame them as essential tools for equity and success. And be sure to include always the student as a participant because their voice matters, and let them steer the ship with their goals and their dreams and their preferences. On the next slide, you will see the 3 barriers are brought about by society and not the student. And this is why the IEP process that includes the student and many team members, such as family members, siblings, and other advocates, is so important. Just to give you one more example of the social model. Johnny can't ride the bus because he uses a wheelchair. No, when we use the social and human rights model, we say Johnny can't ride the bus because the bus isn't accessible. You see what I mean? So I really believe that if you keep these models as tools in the front of your minds, you will always be able to consider the possibilities. And that's why we're all here today, to create a better path for student success. The social model is at the heart of the work I do at Disability Equality and Education. And you will find out more about that in the resource pack that you will be sent after this webinar. I wish you all the success in the future and never forget to consider all the possibilities. Thank you all.
Thank you, Lisa. You know, I always find that the way you presented it makes so much common sense. And in my experience, parents often are the ones that their suggestions just make common sense. And so I think if we all can recognize that some of these things are just good ways, good practice, makes sense for everybody, and a little bit of creativity, we can change some of those old mindsets that are still out there. So thank you again. So now, next up, we are going to have Stephen and his mom share some of their perspectives. So we've got some great pictures here for you to take a look at. So I'm not sure I see everybody on, but is Stephen and Linda, are you on? Can I see you? Okay, perfect. Okay. So what we're going to do is just ask a few questions. And again, feel free to share beyond some of the insights if you want to comment on anything that has already been talked about as well. So Stephen, I'm going to start with you. So I'd like to know, what was your favorite part of college?
Yeah. Uh, can you hold over, please?
What's that?
Just, can you ask him the question again?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. What was your favorite part about college?
I really liked everything about college, but my favorite memories are the friendships with my housemates, mentors, ASU students, and staff. Doing fun activities, being in clubs and on teams, doing schoolwork, learning chores, cooking, and living independently like an adult.
Wow, so you didn't mind the schoolwork. Schoolwork was okay?
Yes.
All right. That's wonderful. Thank you for that. So, Linda, oftentimes we think about, as parents and families, when our kids are going off to college, we have a mix of emotions. And so, curious to hear about what were some of yours.
Lots of emotions. A lot of pride. You're just overflowing with, you know, like, you know, just unbelievable pride and thinking about the possibilities and what going to college meant. Um, I guess you call it cautiously presuming competence because it was uncharted territory. And we always want to presume competence of everyone, and especially all of our children with intellectual disabilities that they can. We always assume they can. And I love what Lisa said about you don't start with the deficits. You always in anything start with the individual's strengths. And another emotion I would say I have was that I was surprised how well I adapted at becoming an empty nester. My younger son had gone off to Penn State the year before, and I was just, dreading it. And it was great, actually, better than expected. And I tell people all the time, if this overprotective Italian mother can survive that, anyone can. So yeah, a full range of emotions there.
Yeah, and I think, when our children seem happy and enjoying and settling in, that sort of calms some of our own anxiety. So it sounds like, Stephen
Right.
had a very great attitude about college and enjoyed it. So,
Oh,
okay.
very much so.
Definitely. Definitely.
But his parents enjoyed it too.
Okay, so our next question then goes back to you, Stephen. So how did high school prepare you for college?
Being included in regular classes like American history, global studies, and FCS, I learned things like cooking and sewing and things about jobs like interviewing and what different jobs are out there. I did unified track and other high school sports teams with peers who had disabilities and friends who didn't. I learned about diversity and relationships that last after you graduate, and some friendships that don't.
So I'm sorry. Go ahead. I thought
I had a lot of opportunities uh, for vocational training. My IEP team asked me if I would like to try out different jobs. I worked in the restaurant businesses, maybe thrift shop, a nursing home, the YMCA, and other places to try to see what I wanted to do after high school. Some some places I liked, but some I didn't.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's perfect because you were given the opportunity to try different things. So to me, you just said loud and clear what everybody should hear that's working in transition planning is that include, 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 right? Because that really sounds like was set you off well for college. So thanks for that sharing.
You're welcome.
Okay, so back to you, Linda. So when did Stephen start post-secondary transition planning and what did that look like?
Um, he, we started, of course, secondary transition planning when he turned 14, but it really wasn't until he was probably 20, when OVR came to an IEP meeting and he just switched gears on us and told the team, including his parents, that he was going to college, despite numerous conversations at home and at school about what life after high school was going to look like and what types of job that he was doing and we were preparing for. But his dream changed, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that his younger brother and a lot of his friends went away to school. So it was, we just kind of turned on a dime, and then it was very important for us, his father and I, to be proactive about discussing post-secondary education as his new goal and not just, keep down the track. They kind of want to like, well, competitive employment and yes, competitive employment is the end goal for any individual, but the path can go through college life first to better prepare them for employment. And luckily, he had an IEP team that knew him very well and was willing to design post-secondary transition planning around this new goal. So we didn't have a whole lot of time, but they did what they were supposed to do and got him ready for the next step, which was college.
Wow, and when I hear you say about basically he's the one that said he wanted to go to college, that really amplifies the importance of student voice. So Stephen, you're right in with the students who were here last week and talking about how important it is for their opinion and their voice to be heard. So we have one last question for you, and that is, Stephen, what advice do you have for students in high school who want to go to college?
I would tell them, don't wait until it is time to leave high school to think about what you want to do. It may seem like a long time away, but your high school goes by real fast. Follow your dreams and share them with people you loved and with your teachers. Ask a sibling or a close friend who's in college to tell you about what they liked and don't like. Maybe you can spend a day on a campus with them so you can see if it's something you would like. College can be hard, but yeah, it's really fun. And it is an experience that you will never regret. While you are in high school, learn and practice speaking up for yourself and asking for help when you need it. You talk with people, feel safe, like teachers and your family about things that are hard for you or that you don't understand. Know that your family will support you and love you always. It costs a lot of money to go to college, so be responsible and don't waste it.
Wow. So I'm listening to you and I'm seeing the chat popping up with different comments of hurrah, great, everything. I think what you're saying is time is of the essence. Time is important, right? So, and it's never
Correct.
too early to start. So thank you very
Mhm.
much.
Welcome.
Then we have one last question, I believe, for you, Linda, and that is, and I know we're running a little tight on time, but can you just tell us about Stephen's ESU college program and how it benefited him?
Sure. So it's the SILS, which is Career Independent Living and Learning Studies. It's a 3-year program. However, Stephen's cohort was offered a 4th-year extension because of the pandemic. So he actually attended when he was after he left high school at 21 and then finished. He had just turned 25. And so he audited self-selected classes, regular college classes that he wanted to audit as well as participate in. They have their own curriculum, which is one of the things that I really liked when we were looking at different schools, is that their curriculum is tailored to the population and the students with intellectual disabilities. So they would learn things like personal finance and more like adult living skills. I consider it independent living with oversight and academic monitoring. So it was a wonderful combination of independence, of skill acquisition, of being mature but being safe, and that was important for him as well as for us.
I know
And he got.
Domenico, I'm just going to say, sorry to interrupt, but Domenico, who was on the webinar last week, who's the director of the program and founded it,
Yes.
did give us, he characterized the program as sort of a hybrid program. So I encourage everybody who's listening, if you weren't here last week, take a look at some of those resources. And I'm going to kind of just pivot to you. If you could identify 1 or 2 major benefits that you had, that you saw in Stephen from that program, what would those be?
Sure. I would say an increase in self-assuredness and confidence, and just his independent living skills, just getting him ready for living on his own, which will be the next step for him, in a supported environment. But his skills and knowledge and just maturity increased 1,000-fold.
And I think those are things that all, parents want to see as outcomes for their students. So I'm glad to hear that. So thank you to the both of you for your sharing your perspective. So we're going to
Absolutely.
move on
Thank you.
now because we have several other presenters. We're going to now have a little bit of what I call conversation about the conversation that's important for educators, families, and students to have as part of the transition process. So we have LaQuinta Montanez and Kate Smith. And so let's, are both of them online? I'm sorry, I don't see the picture. So if you're both here, that's great. And everybody else can put their cameras off. So, okay. Let's see here. I'm going to start by asking Kate if she can share some thoughts about, I would say, how can parents initiate, if you will, the conversation around post-secondary education? What might be some insights you have there? And then, LaQuinta, perhaps you can also provide your thoughts as well after that.
Sure. Thanks, Robin. I'm happy to kind of start that off. So most of my experience and really kind of where I've supported the IEP process happens at the elementary level. So what I would say to parents is that it is never too early to start this conversation. Of course, in some states, 16 is the age where those transition conversations have to start. In Pennsylvania, that's 14. But really, as early as kindergarten, it is important to kind of express that this is a goal for your family and for your child. So what I would suggest is getting clear on a vision statement that really talks about your expectations, your hopes, and your dreams for your child throughout their time in their K-12 program, and then beyond that. And of course, your vision statement is going to be revisited each year and it will likely change throughout their time in school. But the purpose of that is to really make sure that the IEP team knows what your hopes are and that they're not limiting any opportunities for your child. So I think that's one really great piece of advice for families to kind of get that started.
Great. LaQuinta, and you work with students that are older, right? What kind of
Yes.
insights do you have?
So I'm the transition coordinator for the school district of Philadelphia. And one thing that transition planning starts at the age of 14. So it is good to, it's beneficial for students to start at 14 because then that way we have at least 4 years of planning. And then if students who are staying to their 21, 22, we have 8 years of planning to have successful post outcomes. So that is part of the indicator 13 that the state is asking the school to comply with. And so we encourage the parents and the students to have a idea of what they want to do by the transition assessment that they get when they're 14. And it shows what their aptitudes are, what their interests are. And so we build upon that within the IEP team every year.
Okay. So let's tease this out a little bit more. Let's also think then about what students can do in terms of initiating the conversation. So Kate, what advice do you have for students?
So I think for students,
Go ahead, Taylor.
something that's really important is, as Stephen kind of spoke to, getting clear on what it is that helps you the most in school and being able to kind of clearly articulate that and start to advocate for that. So including students in those conversations in IEP meetings, again, as early as kindergarten, even if it's just to ask them, what do you love about school? What seems challenging for you? Really kind of empowering them to be able to speak to their learning style and their preferences. That's really important because when you get to that post-secondary education point, you really need to be able to kind of speak to those things on your own. So again, starting really early and including your child in those conversations, the student in those conversations is really critical.
Yeah, I will piggyback off of Kate on that. We encourage students to have a voice in their IEP since this is about them. This is about what they want to do. So again, going back to that transition assessment, having a conversation with them to engage them in their own educational process. And so they have to have a level of self-advocacy to say, this is what I want to do. And what do you have to do to get there? So we put experiences and job shadowing experiences, work-based learning experiences, and self-advocacy and financial literacy. All of those work skills are very beneficial for students who are going into employment or post-secondary or independent living. But it all starts with the ability to lead self-led, student-led IEP meetings. And so we encourage them, and a lot of times the students are not willing to, but we do encourage them to speak in their own IEP meetings. And oftentimes we have to have parents honor the child's request to be part of that meeting. A lot of times students are excused from those meetings, and they shouldn't be. It's about them, and they should be included in that process at all times, so that they can voice what their interests are, and what they like, what is their desires for life after high school.
Yeah, I think he raised a really good point because I think we need to normalize, student participation and not make it just seem like it's sort of an after the fact, or, and the more we normalize it, they're going to have more confidence. So, so let's tease this out one more string, and that is, what advice or conversation, or how can educators start the conversation around transition? So, Kate?
I think something that's really important for considering, college and post-secondary education is, first of all, teachers don't always know the programs that exist for students that have more complex needs. So I think a great resource that I would suggest to all educators is Think College. That is a site that they can go to. It has tons of great resources to help you familiarize yourself with what some of these inclusive programs look like, and these supported programs and where they exist. So I think that's a great resource. And I also think it is really important for educators to always ensure that they are sharing feedback with families around academics, even if a student's goals are more foundational, right? Which they might be in the earlier years as they transition into K-12 education. But I think providing that academic feedback is really important. Literacy and supporting students in learning how to read is one of the most critical things to supporting accessibility throughout their time in education. So being familiar with all of that as an educator is very important.
Quenta, go ahead.
So I go back to transition planning. One thing, one tool that we use from the Peel Center, which you will see in the later part of the conversation, is called Planning for the Future Checklist. And this is the IEP team is responsible for that. That includes the special education teacher, the parent, the student. It is a collaborative effort where all parties are contributing to this transition planning tool, so that it starts at 7th and 8th grade and it ends at 12th grade plus. And then each year you're capturing what the students' interests are, and it changes from time to time, but you're still capturing it. And you're touching upon, the different tracks that they're interested in. If they're interested in going into college, then there is a column for that. It's post-secondary education, and it's employment and independent living. It serves as a guide for students to know what they should be doing in that grade band. So in 7th and 8th grade, they should be able to have some level of self-advocacy. And then by the time they get into high school, it's more like, what type of program am I in high school? What type of work experience am I entitled to? And so we put these things in place for the students based off of their transition assessment. But we also use that planning for the future checklist to kind of keep them and keep the progress going. So that way we can monitor their progress. Students can gather a hub of supporters by the time they graduate, because again, you may know somebody in 9th grade, you may not know anybody in 10th grade, but you may know somebody in 11th grade. So you're getting a combination of all of your supporters in your whole high school year. And so when you graduate, you have that support system other than at home. But that document is really beneficial for the whole transition planning in terms of what each student should do in each category of post-secondary employment and independent living. And it touched upon different different stages of life as they get older.
Mhm. Yeah, and again, I think the word normalize is in my brain here, but I think the more we normalize too, that starting early is important, and why it's relevant and why it's important is a message we need to get out. And both of you are highlighting that resources are out there everywhere. And we're trying to put some in the chat. We also have some from last week. So those of you who are listening in, there's lots of resources for you to tap into. So one other question I would like to ask for both of you is, and this came up in our discussion as we were sort of prepping for this. So what is something that but you think that, either parents don't know or educators don't know, but that they should know, that you want to say because you have this forum, that is important for them to be aware of?
So from my end, I'll share that I think a great resource for families to know about is that in Pennsylvania, we have a career readiness toolkit. And within that career readiness toolkit, there are expectations that students should be demonstrating as early as pre-K to really begin thinking about what their career might be and what life beyond high school might look like for them. And in addition to that, at the national level, the Common Core standards have a thread that is called the College and Career Readiness Anchor Standards. And they are specific standards related to literacy that are really critical for students to be exposed to and have the opportunity to master to be prepared for college. And again, those standards start as early as first grade for students. So I think that's really important for parents to know. And I think it's important for IEP teams to know as well, because we talk about how some standards are more critical for student success than others. And I think that's a really great starting point for teams to look at when they know that a student is hoping to experience college in the future.
So if you didn't know, now you know. LaQuenta, what would be something that you know, but you're not sure everybody else knows that they should know?
So I, and I'm a parent of a child with autism. So just speaking of a personal and professional experience, but a lot of parents are not aware of the resources that are out there. And so to that aspect, this is why we have the transition fair every year to kind of expose them to the different post-secondary options. Like Steve, he went to East Stroudsburg. There's an Arcadia Real Certificate program. There's Millersville. There's Gwinnett Mercy. There's Widener University. And I don't think a lot of parents are aware of that. And I think that more outreach could be put out so we could inform students and families about the transition fair and what the importance of the transition fair is to connect them with the resources so that they can do a lot of research in terms of what their student wants to do. So if their student tells them at 15 that they want to go to college, then there are options for that. Like, what can we do to prepare them for that? And then same thing with supported employment. We collaborate with OVR. We collaborate with Department of Behavioral Health IDI. OVR has a pre-employment transition services for students where we talk about career development. We talk about with the career development, self-advocacy, and then job shadowing, and of course, work-based learning experiences, and they learn how to travel train and learn how to access their community where they're living for, independent living. But if they're going to college, they're going to need to know how to navigate the campus. If they're going to employment, they need to know how to navigate to the job. So all of this ties into each other. And so I think that parents need to be more aware of the resources that they have that is beneficial to their students.
Right. So my little timer is telling me I need to move on. So I think that what both of you are really highlighting is that there is, let's start young. Let's normalize that students need to have a voice and be involved. And third, there's so much out there, options and possibilities. So thank you to you both. And we are going to now ask for Diane Perry to join us. And she is going to speak to the Vision Building Tools for Success. So Diane, you're up.
I am. Thank you. So they left me to wrap it up and get it moving here. So that's what I'm going to do. Um, and first of all, I love talking about transition. So I'll put my email in the chat too at the end, because if you have any questions as I go through my slides, I always love to talk about transition. So next slide, please. Thank you. So the vision, that's where it needs to start. Now, I'm going to tell you, I'm also a parent. Many of you know me, and I did say that in my bio, of a young man, and actually he's 32 now. But I was given the gift of being around wonderful people such as Kathy Brill and Colleen Tomko, and getting that early on ideas around vision and building that vision. And you need that vision, and that drives all the advocacy around. It drives it for their life, it drives it for education, and you need to keep sharing that vision over and over. I know you heard this earlier already. I think it was Kate that said you keep sharing that vision statement every year at the IEP meeting. That's what I did. I wrote that vision statement. I read it to my husband. If he cried, I knew it was good. So we went to the team meeting, and we share it with the team, right? You got to get their buy-in. They got to know and have, that idea of what that will be. David's vision statement always started off that he will be a tax-paying citizen, because you know what? That means he's going to go to college maybe, or he's going to get a job and things like that. I needed to change that mindset of all the people around him. And having to do that, I needed to work together to educate the educators and any of those naysayers around me, to understand that this is the vision and this is what's going to happen. And you know what? It did happen. Next slide, please. So again, you need to start there, and you can start early, right? But think big. Have those high expectations, and you think about what does that youth life look like in a perfect world when there's no barriers at all? What is that really going to look like? And you need to have that really big ideas and get it up there on that paper. Talk about it. Then you'd like kind of scale it down. What's it going to look like in 2 or 5 years? What's it going to look like in 5 to 10 years? And you have those conversations, and you keep that conversation moving throughout your whole student's life, right? And this is a slide to kind of show you a little bit about what you can visualize for success for your young person in your life. Next slide, please, because I got to keep this moving. One of the bigger things, and I heard this earlier too, is presuming competence. I think it was Linda that shared about we need to presume competence, and share that with everyone. That is the belief that with good instruction and high quality support, all students have the ability to access age appropriate content, the general education curriculum aligned to grade level standards. All of this is very important. Students are viewed through the lens of ability rather than disability. Next slide, please. So, what do you do? What are those tools? How, right? What is the how around this? It all sounds great and wonderful, right? How do you do it? Well, you can start with what's called a student snapshot. And I think that might be in my resources too, but that is, it's a document that you can have, and it gives you a guideline. It gives you the questions to think about, because if you're not sure, what does your child do during the day? What do they do at night? What does their weekend look like? It gives you guiding questions. So you can use this student snapshot. It's from the Pacer, pacer.org, I think it might be. And that will give you a guide. And that helps for school, right? Because the school team is there to help that vision become a reality, right? And you need to keep talking about that vision with your IEP team and keep it moving. And you know what? When your student gets older, I heard all this earlier too. You heard this, those student-led IEPs. That's when they're going to share their vision. It does take a shift, right? My son David started sharing his own vision, and he started doing his own PowerPoint when he went to high school. And all the time, his first thing was, I'm moving out. No more mom, dad, or Zachary. I mean, he wanted to get out of here. He still says he wants to get out of here, and I'm trying to kick him out, but he ain't out yet. But we're working on it. But that's okay. You know what? He wanted to go to college too. He did do that. So, we're working, and he's working. So there's, one step at a time, right? Next slide, please, because I know I got to keep it moving here. So this is all called person-centered planning, right? PCP, where you develop these visions and you talk about that person in the middle. It uncovers what's important to that person every single day. The person-centered planning revolves around their needs, their likes, their dislikes. What they don't like is important also, but also their dreams. What is that dream? David wanted to drive, right? I tell this story a lot of times that he wanted to drive, and I wasn't going to crush that. I wasn't going to say nothing that you can't drive, right? And I sure told the school team, you better not. We gotta, if he wants to drive, let him drive, And he started learning. He started taking the test online and all this and everything. But at some point, he eventually was like, I don't know. I don't want to go to that place to go take that test. So he ended up not wanting to do it. But you know what? He learned all along the line because he was online. He was taking the test. He's learning. So whatever that goal is, if they want to be a doctor, let it, you know what? Who are we to crush that? But along that road, right? All the steps you got to take to be a doctor, they're going to find something. They're going to find their niche, or they're going to say, no, I don't like that. So that's what that's all about. Really revolving about what they want. And the first step toward moving to anything is a self-determined life. Next slide, please. And yes, I do have tools around that too. So this is a picture of a path. This is one of the tools around person-centered planning that I facilitated for a young lady who was wonderful. She's actually starting college her first year today, this year at Millersville. But this is what a path looks like. You gather the people around. She had her friends there. She had school people there. She had her family there. She was in Girl Scouts. They had a couple people from the Girl Scouts. I mean, it was a great circle. So build that circle around your student. Build those relationships. And you know what? You ask. She asked people to come, and you know what? They came. And we had a great afternoon, and we worked on what her path was going to be. And that's one of the other tools. And you're going to get all these resources, I think, after too. So I think I have to keep it moving. Next slide, please. So we talked earlier about the Pennsylvania Planning for the Futures checklist that the Peel Center has. You will have the link for that as well. It is a great document. This is a document that goes in the hands of the student, and with the help of the family and the school, they help with that checklist. And LaQuenta really talked about all the details in that Planning for the Futures checklist. So I think the next slide kind of gives you a picture of one of the pages, or this is actually, this is part of what that checklist could look. I know it's really small, I apologize, but it shows the breakdown that it talks about post-secondary employment and community living. But I think the next slide actually does do a nice snippet. There we go. And each page, it goes 9th grade, 10th grade, and goes through each age, and it asks you all these different questions. It also has all the resources and the links to help you at each level of where you are as a young person getting ready to transition. I'm also putting in the chat here Transition Tuesdays, which are also on the Peel Center's website. Transition Tuesdays takes you through transition. It breaks down that IEP transition section. I encourage you to watch some of those archived webinars on there. I did that along with Michael Storer, who was with the National Technical Assistance Center. And we had advocates and we had parents with us, and it was a great resource for families. One last thing I want to leave you with, we also asked Linda about, advice to families and stuff. As a parent, it's hard to let go. It's hard to say, you know what, let me put it in their hands. We have to let our children make mistakes. We have to let them trip up. That's okay. How else are they going to learn, right? My husband always says they always wanted to teach David how to do different things. When he was younger, they wanted to teach him how to jump. Well, the next thing he was doing, he was up on tables and he was jumping off tables. And he's like, well, you wanted to teach him how to jump, right? So you know what? You got to let them do what they need to do. And that's how they learn, because then they learn not to jump off the table, right? So, or if they hurt themselves, they'll learn, well, I don't have, I won't do that again. But families really, it's really hard to let go. And that is a really real conversation to have. Connect yourself with other families and they'll help you with that. They'll cry with you. They'll help you. You know, I always had, whenever I had issues, I would call my good friends that I circled around. A few of them are on here today. And I would say, you know what, Colleen, blah, 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 blah. And then she'd say, okay, Diane, let's do this. Find your niche, find your couples of people that you're going to work through this, because it is hard as a parent. It is overwhelming. Stay connected. And I think that's me to wrap it up. And I think I went over a little and I apologize.
Wow, you brought that home. So the passion, the inspiration, the possibilities are all over this webinar. So now we're at the time, at this place where we want to see what Q&A questions you have for the panelists. So I'm going to turn it over, I think, to a couple of our moderators, Colleen and Betsy and Kathy, if you are there. Any one of you want to take the lead and ask any questions that we have in the Q&A? There you go, Colleen.
Yeah, somehow the question seems, Kelly wanted to ask Linda and Stephen that she has a high school junior with Down syndrome who wants college one day, and it's hard for me to envision him in college right now. I'm wondering if Linda could already see enough maturity in her son during high school to imagine he would be ready to live away at college one day.
Sorry,
So
I
Linda,
was in the process of typing the answer to
Oh.
Kelly, but yes and no. And it's always hard, like Diane said, and I love everything that all the presenters said, but you know, it's bittersweet. And you say you're so proud, but it wasn't so much maturity as I believed he could do it. I saw a lot of potential but it was just, you know, like the thought of his not being here every day. And like I said, it's nothing like you think. Like you get through it, you know. He was so busy and having so much fun that he rarely could take our phone calls. It was like, yeah, I'm busy, Mom, can I call you later? And so yes, your son, I'm sure will love it, and you will be fine, and you can call me anytime. And I am at Patton in Malvern, so I can put my number and everything in the chat.
okay, do we have any more questions?
I was wondering, Stephen, could you tell us, like, are you still connected with people that you went to the college with?
You're Stephen.
I don't know what to say.
Yes, he is. In fact, we just went to a couple weeks ago, went to his house manager's wedding, a family. And we'll be going to ESU homecoming in a couple weeks too. So yeah, I think a lot of the people that he met are lifelong friends.
Thank you.
Another follow-up, what are you doing now that you've left college, correct? Are you still? And then, so what are you doing now of life?
What do you do now?
Working, I'm guessing.
You work? Yeah. Where do you work?
I work 2 jobs, paying job. This seafood restaurant and volunteer with Mom and Patton.
So one day a week he comes with me to Patton and works in the publications department. And then 3 afternoons a week he works at a local restaurant.
So Diane, you're still on. Maybe you could share what David's doing now, because he's exited college too, right? And he's doing things.
That's correct. Yes. And I did put in the chat too that he didn't start college until he was 24. So yes, you want to build that up, but you know, he would take a class every now and then, like at the community college, but then the actual program that he decided to finally go to at Wagner didn't start till he didn't do it till 24. So it's, you know, it's just something to think about as well. To yes, you want to be able to do that right after, but sometimes they need to wait, just like some other people. But David now also, and he did work at the college too during some of that period as well. But he works part-time at Home Depot right now and loves it. Home Depot is a great company to work for. Again, he sits on two self-advocacy boards as well. He's on a boxing um, league. Well, I don't know if it's a league, but he boxes once a week. He's got a trainer that he works out with. Him and his buddies get together many times or actually I should say friends, because it's not just the young men that he has friends. It's young ladies too that they get together on Friday nights for, you know, Friday night SmackDown for the wrestling. So they all love that wrestling. He's got a girlfriend of almost 11 years now. So he dates. So he's got a pretty full life. He's pretty, you know, he's got more of a social life than me right now, but that's okay. That's what you're supposed to do when you're young. But and he has stayed connected to his college um, peers as well.
So I'm going to add in also, this is Kathy Brill. Let me see if I can pull up my picture here. There we go. And so my daughter is now 35 and she lives in a home of her own. And when she went off to college, I really thought my husband was going to have a heart attack. And I'm really not kidding you. He was so stressed out. I didn't feel as stressed because I did so much with self-advocates and people with disabilities for years before she left for college. He did not. So he didn't think she could do it. She uses a power wheelchair, a lot of assistive technology, and needs a lot of attendant care for her meals, going to bed, getting up. He just didn't think it was possible. And so I guess one of the things that I'd like to really share is know about your own fears. You're going to have fears. You're going to have a lot of fears. And you got to be careful, you know, that the one spouse doesn't bounce it off the other spouse, you know, and make it a real mess within your family and end up not allowing them to pursue their dreams. But she really wanted to go to college. He got over it. He turned white on the way home. I really thought that we were going to have to pull off the road. He was so white. She did dump her wheelchair a couple of times up at college and did not tell us about it. That's another part of the college experience is you have to let them make their mistakes. They're going to make mistakes just like you and I do, just, you know, all parents do at any time. And if you went to college, you'll know you probably made more mistakes than they're going to make. So those were some of the things that we had to learn, and we had to just have faith in the process. The schools have things built in to their like disability office. They have things built in there to assist them with if they need to have their books scanned or whatever happens these days. Like I said, she's 35 now. But you know, you have to believe in the process, figure out what the process is and make sure the process is working. And does your child know how to use that process? If not, how can they get the assistance to help them with that process until they do learn it? But the other thing that I wanted to just mention that I did as because I knew that Alexa would need, or my daughter would need a lot of assistance with from others coming into her room and helping her get dressed and stuff like that. So I got everything very, very organized in her room. Super duper organized, everything labeled with the amounts on the outside of each one with a separate sheet saying where things are located. Just so that to eliminate as much as possible any confusion which might add to any stress before classes happen, for the day, things like that. Okay, I think that's all I really wanted to add for it right now.
Thank you, Kathy. Does anybody else have any other questions?
I
We
think
have time for
LaQuinta wanted to
LaQuinta.
share some.
LaQuinta wanted to share a process about her son if we have time.
Oh, yes, we do.
Oh, uh, so my son graduated from Shaw High School. He was 14 in the 8th grade. And so we started his planning process at 14 with pre-employment transition services. We started off with career development and career exposure at that time. And then, of course, when he transferred over to Starr High School for the agricultural program, he was an animal science major. And so he worked at the Philadelphia Zoo. He worked at the Philadelphia Goat Project. So that was part of his job shadowing so that he could see what those jobs are. And so that went all the way up until 10th grade, where he was able to do an internship over the summer. Because of the CTE program that he was in, he could not do work-based learning during the day. So we did it after school. And they were very accommodating, overall. And so 11th grade, work-based learning. And so ironically enough, in the 12th grade year, which is his last IEP meeting, he switched gears and changed the whole platform. He did not want to go into animal science. He did not want to go to Manual College. He wanted to go to Albright with their gaming simulation and development major, which he is a gamer. He knows how to fix these computers. He knows how to fix the consoles, and so that is something that he is willing to do. But his self-advocacy, I commend him on that. When he transferred and graduated to Albright College, I, as a parent, was a little apprehensive at first because, it's my baby. So, I had to let him go. I had to let him thrive on its own. But one thing I do want to point out is that he had to understand that there was a difference between the delivery of services at the high school versus college. And so he thought that it was the same setup. No, it's not the same setup. In high school, you're following IDEA, but in college, you have to request these accommodations. And so for the first half of the semester, the first semester actually, he struggled in that capacity in terms of, going to the disability office to say, hey, I need help with this, or hey, I need help with that. Even an OVR counselor would come on campus and he really hesitated to say anything. But we would have conversations at night. And so I said, you have to advocate, like, you know how to do this. So you have to tell them how to help you. And so that's one key takeaway that I want everyone and parents and students and families to know is knowing the differences between, the different types of services that are offered, which not going to be the same that you would receive in a K-12 setting. And so he's doing wonderful. He's in his second year, Dean's List. And so I'm proud of him. Now he has matured a lot. He's had 2 girlfriends so far, and I'm a little apprehensive on that as well. So I'm like, oh my God, no. But he's doing his thing, and so I'm proud of him. But yeah, I just wanted to share the whole accommodation part of what that looks like on a collegiate campus for students with autism and neurodivergent and intellectual disabilities. You have to have a certain level of self-advocacy to say, hey, listen, this is what I need to help me be successful. So what can you do? And most colleges have a success coach that helps all incoming freshmen, regardless of what their disability is, or if they have one or if they don't have one. All freshmen get a success coach, and that success coach follows them until they graduate from college, which is something that Albright College has. And so I'm grateful for that. So, but yeah, I just wanted to point that out. Thank you.
Thank you so much, not only for sharing the proudness that you have about your son and some of those experiences, but that sort of exclamation point at the end, the differences between high school and college, and
Thank you.
showing, you just gave a good example of how your son actually lived that out. He was sort of still thinking, high school. So very good. Do we have any other questions before we wrap it up here now?
We had just a couple, Robin, that were submitted. One is maybe for Kate and LaQuinta, and that is in as early as elementary school up through middle and high school, schools will host college fairs or career fairs. How can teams and families make sure that all students have access to those? And that they're not left out of those opportunities.
So I'll go, Kate. So again, I go back to the transition fair. A lot of this information is shared with the school team. The seconds at the school, the counselors, and then the vocational itinerant. And so we have a Google Classroom where I'm coming across different resources and I'll upload it to the Google Classroom so that the student can take it home to families to know about these programs. And so the transition fair that I have at 440 is replicated, at different high schools throughout the city so that parents can have access to them in their own community. And so all of that information is there, where we call all post-secondary education, employment, and independent living. Liberty Resources is on the call. They're always there. Peer Center, there's a lot of advocacy there. And then, of course, for our students with, complex needs, who may need assistance with, maybe some life support in terms of independent living and supported employment. We have special people in the Northeast. And so all of these agencies participate in the transition fair that captures all of the 3 domains of transition planning.
I'll just add in a lot of the work that I do now in my current role is supporting school districts with thinking about the systems that they have in place to make sure that there is greater accessibility for all students. And I think one of the breakdowns sometimes is that the advertising of college fairs doesn't necessarily make its way to students who are in some of those more restrictive programs like a multiple disability support or a life skills support. So again, that's the kind of awareness that I do in my role, is making sure that districts see that that information should be made available to all students. I do know, like LaQuinta has talked about tonight, she's in a role as a transition coordinator. Many of our school districts are lucky enough to have that position. So working closely with transition coordinators to make sure that information gets to all students is really beneficial.
Okay, well, did you have another question, Betsy? Or
There was just one more, if we have this, just
yeah, let's do it.
so this one I think is for Linda and Stephen, and that's after having the experience of college, what do you wish you'd known earlier that would have helped make college easier, or what do you wish you had known in middle or high school?
I wish I would have started thinking that way and preparing, like talking to Stephen about it earlier and being more proactive. We had conversations, like I said, but just researching more and comparing programs and getting him ready and us ready. Is there anything that you wish you would have known? There's a lot more programs now than there were back then, as I think LaQuinta or someone mentioned. So just the Think College is a great resource, and others, but just possibilities, and that the team is going along with being proactive as well.
Well, I think we have a webinar wrap. I think this has been great. We have just a couple reminders to everybody here. So we do have one more webinar in this series, and that will be next Wednesday, the same time, same place. It will be focusing on Real Talk, the college experience. We also want to remind you that, again, all of these webinars are being recorded and are being posted on the TASH YouTube channel. And we would like you to check out the link in the chat so that you could complete the survey and give us some feedback on the webinars, something you might like to see in the future. And I think with that, we just want to send out all the good vibes for all the possibilities that are out there and options. And we want to thank you for joining. So have a great evening, everyone.